Belial, the worthless, rooted from the Hebrew Belial, which just means unworthy or unfaithful, but that has quickly changed over time. As it's gone on, that lack of worth has been made manifest into the form of a fallen angel, one that sits as a king of hell according to infernal grimoires, but also one who lingers as a threat to the entire divine hierarchy. But how strong is he? As I said, the word Belial, pardon my pronunciation, translates to one lacking worth or worthlessness, and that is all the name really carried throughout antiquity. In later, more scholarly interpretations of any text referencing Belial have translated purely as worthless, because in those ages that's all the word meant. However, that changed. Toward the end of the BCE era and into the 1st century CE, Belial began to take on a physical state, Belial, the earliest stories of which seem to come into being in the form of the Dead Sea Scrolls, most notably the War Scroll, where our Belial takes on his most notable form, and where we will begin with the scaling for this video. From the first line of the War Scroll, it becomes clear that Belial himself is opposing God, as it reads as follows: "The first attack of the Sons of Light shall be undertaken against the forces of the Sons of Darkness, the army of Belial." This very line puts Belial directly against God, not as an inferior but an equal. Now, this does not mean that Belial scales to the very God that created the cosmos in 7 days, but it does lay a firm foundation for later scaling relating to Belial, as well as setting him up as an equal general, or at least a general opposing God. As later grimoires explain, Belial, the demon, was supposedly made just after the angel that would become the devil, Satan. Again, see the video for that loaded topic, and before Michael and his fellow archangels. This gets elaborated on further with the fact that when the fighting gets extreme, Michael is the one sent to pursue Belial directly and to aid the forces of God's people in this apocalypse of a war. Now, we've been over Michael's scaling several times. Mind you, those are from a different time period, but for the sake of the video, we're going to treat them as valid for the War Scroll. So for those of you in the back, Michael in the book of Revelation was more than capable of beating Satan in the form of a grand crimson dragon who could fling hundreds of stars out of the sky at once. The fact Michael is even sent in the first place to fight Belial validates this placement as a foil to God himself, as the way of the eschatology of the Dead Sea Scrolls of Qumran attest. It would be, however, that even Michael's strength would not be enough, seeing as Adonai had to raise his hand to put an end to Belial in the conflict. This would grant Belial equal to, if not greater power than Michael's multi-solar system to multi-galaxy levels of attack potency and durability. The fact God had to step in to stop Belial does not really give anything concrete beside that, since Belial does not scale anywhere whatsoever to God, nor should he narratively. So the best for Belial is that he at least matches Michael's power based on the Dead Sea Scrolls. If it's any consolation too, Crowley's Lesser Key of Solomon goes on to grant Belial the title of king, and directly compares him to Michael and Satan, here listed as Lucifer, thus furthering with a far more recent text the idea that Belial may be an equal to those two, and thus gain the revelation scaling without the benefit of the doubt given to the Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls. So where does that actually leave Belial? To the best I can gather from my research and the typical vagueness of mythology and text, since power scaling is never the intention of systems of faith, no matter how ridiculous the stories or how high the stakes or anything else, Belial would scale as follows. In terms of attack potency, he directly scales to Michael. The pair fought, and God had to step in to finally kill him, thus granting those stars the solar system levels of attack potency at the low end, and far, far higher if you take Michael and Satan's fighting in Revelation to its logical extreme. And Belial has to scale to that because he's directly noted and compared to them. In terms of speed, they would also be on par, granting anywhere from infinite speeds as angels can travel between heaven and earth, to massively faster than light speeds just from the visualization of Michael fighting and thus avoiding Satan's attacks, and the falling stars being flung at him from light years away. Belial holds great influence, and thus can even enrapture the minds of staunch enemies into allies, conjuring forbidden spirits, and prove so deceptive that he does not speak the truth, a threatening foe on any battlefield. So with these mental manipulations, these star to solar to galaxy levels of attack potency, this unquantifiably faster than light speed to even infinite speed, Belial is powerful. but also cocky. Just like Lucifer, he did fall. And just like Lucifer, going against God was his biggest folly. Pride goeth before the fall, and it goeth before Belial as well. So perhaps he is really Belial, worthless, unworthy, unholy. As always, thanks for watching, stay hydrated, and be good.